Welcome to everybody and all our guests who are presenting this afternoon to this extended happy hour. We have a 2 hours slot, and that's partly because we have such an extensive program for you with our partners on the TAPPI project. You'll hear a little bit more from each of them, but I just wanted to acknowledge our thanks to Dunhill Medical Trust and our partners, the TSA, and for the delivery of this program, but also very closely worked at a local level in different localities across England, Scotland and Wales with 6 agencies, Beald, Haringey, Platform, Pobble, Southend and Wiltshire, and again, and a myriad of local partners to them as well as some support from Cambridge Centre for Housing Policy and Co-Production Works. I'm afraid Jolie and Pete can't be with us this afternoon from Co-Production Work. They've had to drop out at very short notice for personal reason, but we're looking forward to Deborah, one of the co-production leads from Haringey, joining us later. The TAPPI was launched a couple of months ago at the HousingLIN annual summit, a festival of ideas, and it's really starting to have a significant impact in the way we're thinking about technology-enabled care to support people in a variety of housing and accommodation settings, and particularly for an ageing population. As you can see from the slide, it's having an impact locally, but at a national level, it's also had significant progress, not more so than the work that's been undertaken by the Older Persons Housing Task Force, the work that the HousingLIN is supporting with Lord Best at the all-party parliamentary group on regenerating outdated sheltered housing. And for those of you who are familiar with the Housing and Ageing Alliance, they have produced a manifesto with a 15-point plan calling for improved housing and care support and services for people living in a variety of settings in older age. And point 15 is the adoption of the TAPPI principles. This all against a backdrop up until recently that the digital switchover was going to occur at the end of 2025. That has now been extended to the end of January 2027. And that's good news for many people who've been proactively looking at how technology has a role to play in providing a digital solution as we move from analog to digital. And work that the LIN has done with both Appello in a recent poll, identifying that the sector is still fairly underprepared, and we'll probably hear from Nathan about this as well, and a white paper with Everon looking at what are the sort of practical things that we can use to develop a much more technology-enabled digital infrastructure. So without further ado, against that backdrop, we're going to explore how we can make sure TAPPI is part of the everyday DNA of the sector. And we are delighted to be joined by a stellar cast. Sarah Allport is going to chair our programme this afternoon. And as a happy hour, we actually have 2 rounds. The first round is looking about embedding the TAPPI principles, and the second round is around looking at the findings and the tools. But we'll go back to the first slide that we just had on screen, and I'm going to hand over to Sarah, who can lead us through the programme for the next nearly 2 hours. And before I forget, can I also wish our chair of the TAPPI inquiry, Roy Sandbach, Professor, indeed, for a happy 70th birthday this week. Thank you. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Delighted to be with you and chairing this session. Just a few words for those who don't know us. DMT is an endowed charitable foundation which will be celebrating our 75th anniversary next year, so slightly older than Roy. Since the 1980s, we have been focused on funding research into diseases and issues of ageing and supporting community organisations working with older people to improve later life. In 2020, we launched our new 5-year strategy, and in the process of working through that and what it would look like, we started to think about how we could fund differently. It became apparent to us that the traditional grant model clearly wasn't working anymore, and when the HousingLIN approached us about supporting what was then TAPPI 1 and the creation of the TAPPI principles all those years ago, we saw this as an opportunity to do something very different. Too often with technology projects, you find that the technology has been pre-selected and then it's introduced to a community. And this will have varying degrees of success. And of course, once the project ends, you often find it's not adopted or sustained in any way. We knew from the start that we wanted TAPPI to be different, and that was a vision shared by all of the partners involved. There'd be no pre-selection of technology. TAPPI would come from a place of What is the problem we need to address? Could technology address that problem? And if so, what type of technology? To do this, we knew that we needed to be fully co-produced, not just with the older people taking part, but with their wider support network of staff, family, and friends. So in addition to our two delivery partners, the HousingLIN and the TSA, we brought along co-production works, and we also had our independent evaluation partner, the team from Cambridge University. Both aspects of how we approach this you will hear from later in the afternoon. As much as this project was about testing and refining the principles in the real world, we also wanted this to be sustainable. We didn't want these to be pilot projects that just ended in a year or so. Our 6 test beds came on board with the vision of incorporating the learning into their technology strategies and embedding this learning throughout their organisations. And we are delighted that not only have they helped to test and refine and reduce the principles, as you'll see, but they are all continuing in the journey and that you're going to be able to hear about their experiences. So that brings me to this afternoon's agenda. Roy, as we said, is going to take us through the origins of TAPPI and some of the key learnings that came out of TAPPI 2. We're then going to hear from 4 of our 6 test beds, Field, Platform, Pobble and Wiltshire. And then we're going to follow that with members of the delivery team who will cover the key findings before we end our afternoon with a Q&A session. So can I now say, Roy, over to you to take us through the next steps.
Sure. Thanks, Sarah. I hope you can all hear me, and it's a pleasure to be here. And thanks, Jeremy. First of all, when you said TAPPI, when you said the happy hour was extended to 2 hours, I thought it was because I was going to have to rabbit on for a long time, but I'm going to try and keep it to 7 minutes, which we agreed. And thanks for the birthday wishes. Honestly, I don't really feel like 70, but there we go. So I'm very fortunate to have been the independent chair of TAPPI over the past several years. I'm not an expert. You people out there are the experts, but I'm going to share with you some of the sort of broad scale learnings, really, from first of all TAPPI 1, but subsequently TAPPI 2. And then I'm going to hand over to the people who were practically involved in TAPPI 2 to give you some insights from their specific work. TAPPI originated really as if you think about this, we've got a potential disaster on our hands. And it's a disaster which I often bucket into 4 areas. First of all, inevitable demographic change. I mean, there are plenty of numbers I could give you, but let me just give you a couple. By 2035, 25% of the population will be over 65, and I'll be one of them. And indeed, my mother's one of them. We're going to have to deal with that. There's a health issue then. Our NHS is creaking for lots and lots of different reasons, but it's creaking especially because of the impact of that elderly demographic. There's a housing issue. We don't have enough housing. The housing that we have, quite a lot of it is in the government's terms, not decent. And that needs to be managed as well. And then there's a money question. Where does the money come from to allow us to, as I have on this chart, live gloriously ordinary lives? And if you put all of those things together, then we've got a catastrophic problem ahead of us unless we do something at the system level. And I make this point specifically at the system level, where everybody who engages with issues of allowing people to live better and longer lives independently, how everybody who's involved in those things can work together. And so I'm going to talk about system in a minute. Anyway, the background to the TAPPI inquiry is really quite simple. You can read the TAPPI report at 1, which shared lots and lots of fantastic best practice. Can you do the next chart, please, Sally? We got a lot of input from experts, and I mean many, many experts. We had lots of expert witnesses, we had panels, we had sectoral events, and we had a very broad consultation. And interestingly, those experts came from the public sector, the private sector, and all sorts of interested parties. And we shared and we dovetailed what we were doing with 3 other commissions which were running around the same time. Next chart, please. The lessons from TAPPI 1 were pretty interesting ones. Obviously, well, it's not so obvious always, actually, but people must be at the heart of care technology interventions. And, you know, everyone that we talk to who lives in their older years, they want to play a part in decisions that are made about them and with. They want decisions to be made with them and not for them. That might seem obvious, but it's not always followed in practice. As I said earlier, the system is a complex one and it can easily be siloed. Not everybody in housing knows everything there is to know about the health issues that exist in the context of technology and elderly living. Training is patchy, to be quite honest with you. I could talk long and hard about that. But what we did do was we identified a lot of global best practice, which is in the TAPPI 1 report. It's really fascinating. But we also developed a set of principles. Next chart, please. We decided to take I'll come back to the principles in a minute. We decided to take the principles to some testbed areas, primarily because we wanted to test them. We wanted to sort of bend them and stretch them and see whether or not they worked. And we recruited, as part of TAPPI 2, 6 testbeds, and I've listed them here. Next. As we developed the program for phase 2 of TAPPI, it was obvious that there were a lot of insights that were coming from the testbed areas, a fantastic engagement with the people who were actually putting into practice the TAPPI principles and working directly on the use of technology in all sorts of different housing environments. These are the 6 operational levels. I'll come to strategy in a minute, but these are the 6 operational lessons, which are critically important. We have to get the basics right. It is, I mean, obviously, it's obvious actually that if you're going to have great use of technology, then you're going to have reliable internet connection, and that is by no means always the case. Second, you must co-produce early with people. I come from a corporate consumer background, and that was almost implicit in everything that we did. It needs to be implicit in everything that we do in the context of technology for older people. Make it seamless. What that really means is just let's all work together on this. We can't pick care tech devices we need to enroll people in their use. And one way to enroll people in the use of something is to make the barriers relatively limited. Ensure it's affordable. There are all sorts of costs around this which we need to deal with. Older people do worry nowadays about their safety, particularly in areas that they're not particularly well trained and have a background in, things that don't come naturally at their age. And online safety and scams are, we need to make sure that they feel comfortable with what we do. And then support. We need to ensure that there is always a program of upskilling in the people who work with older people in order to provide technology. Now, I suspect all of the test beds will talk in part about some of these things. Next slide, please. What that led to was a modification of the first TAPPI principles. And this is the infographic, if you like, of the areas in which we think. What I'd like to think is that everybody who works in the context of housing, health, care, and technology has a sheet on their desk or a seat sitting in the room with them where these principles are actually just written there. And they're considered every time some thoughts are given to how people should be engaged with technology. Next. I've got a couple of charts here which are challenging. They're challenging for everyone who's on this webinar. But I think we've got to have the conversation on all of this. The test beds were great, but we're going to have to catalyze national change. I'm not entirely sure how to do that, by the way. Catalyzing national change is not easy. We would like to enroll you guys in a movement for the application of technology and the TAPPI principles in the work that you do, wherever it is. We need to make sure that everything we do is people-centric and reduce complexity. Purpose-driven system change is elusive. I'm not entirely sure who's in charge of system change. I'm hoping, by the way, that that as we come into a new government environment, that potentially there is a sort of flagship ownership of some of this, the use of technology for care, because I think policy for care needs to have technology at its heart. On the other hand, we also need local movement for delivery of change in this context. And I actually believe that certainly in the metro areas, the role of our metro mayors could be very important, and the role of the integrated care boards could be very important. There is a massive consumer market gap. I'm not sure why there is one, but there is one. If there's anybody out there who's got the potential for starting their own business and creating a market platform for seniors, senior technologies, then there's definitely a market there. And training for care technology use has to be a foundation in every skill and every technology capability. Next chart, please. I'm just going to repeat, we need system change, but we need to apply it locally. I firmly believe that as we execute the digital strategy switchover, we do need a broad-scale independent living strategy for older people, keeping them at home and happy for longer. I'm not sure who can convene on this, but integrated care boards in the health system, they are big enough and have potentially enough capability to be able to lead on this. And I'd like to think that people with responsibility for professional training will reconstruct some of their curricula to ensure that technology, as it changes, and it's changing quickly, is incorporated into training, whether it's from GPs through to OTs or even, housing officers, whoever it might be. It's ridiculous, by the way, in our world of science and technology that we've got innovation centers that focus on gene technology and advanced manufacturing and materials and composites, but we don't have one for care and technology. I'm working on that. And then finally, there needs to be a care tech market. Next. You can find out a lot more, and I do tweet as Prof. Roy S. But I'm just going to make one point. I am not an expert. You people are experts. And I'm going to hand over to some experts now to talk in your language about what they've learned from applying the TAPPI principles. I've been honored to be the chair of this. However, I couldn't have done it without all of the people who you're going to hear from now. So thanks very much. Have a great couple of hours. And I'll hand over to Gary. Gary, by the way, has been an absolute pioneer of the application of the TAPPI principles in Beeld in Scotland, and I've had the pleasure of visiting him several times. It's fantastic. Over to you, Gary.
Afternoon, everyone. It helps if I click that notorious unmute button. Roy, I'd like to take this opportunity to just say thank you, and a big thank you for all the work you've done throughout TAPPI and chairing the project. It's been an absolute pleasure to work alongside you. And thank you for coming along, everyone. My name's Gary Bailey. I'm Head of Service for Beeld Response 24 and Assistive Technology Development at Beeld Housing and Care. And today I'm just going to take you on a quick journey and an overview around, firstly, who Beeld Housing and Care are and some context as to why we wanted to get involved with TAPPI, what our TAPPI experience looked like and how we're embedding the TAPPI how we're embedding our TAPPI learnings into our business as usual as we move forward. So I'm just checking, can I get a thumbs up? Can everyone see the screen okay? Perfect, thank you. Okay, so some context. Build Housing and Care, we're one of the largest registered social landlords in Scotland with over 6,000 tenants, and that's across 148 developments, over 22 local health boards in Scotland. And we're seen as a leading provider of retirement housing. We currently deliver over 3,500 of care per week via our Build Care at Home services for our tenants requiring additional support. And we also currently have a smaller cohort of owner services where we have some tenants who own their own flat within a build development. And then we've got our digitally enabled in-house alarm receiving centre, which is also known as BR24. And BR24 provide a telecare service to over 14,500 people across Scotland, made up of our internal tenants, but also external partnerships, including local health and social care partners. At Build, we've had an okay track record over the last 50 years. We benefit from significant scale and experience and reach. We're known and respected for our considerable expertise, in-depth customer knowledge and innovative approaches, and the opportunity to be part of the TAPPI project came at the right time for us to push on with the next phase of our growth and engagement strategy. So at Build, we recognise that there are now more than 1 million people over the age of 65 in Scotland, and that figure is predicted to rise by more than 300,000 over the next decade, and the demand for housing services, which, as Roy rightly said earlier, is already an undersupplied market, is expected to rise correspondingly, or at a greater rate. Already there's an estimated 22% of people over 75 live in social rented accommodation, and that's against a backdrop of falling rates of home ownership, and worryingly, fewer than half of Scotland's over 55s expecting their home to be suitable for them in later life. So there are strong and clear indicators of growing demand for housing services. We saw this opportunity to partake in TAPPI to support shape our future with our tenants and to ensure we're equipped to offer a modern, tailored and flexible service to our tenants by building on recent digital successes. So what does Build's TAPPI experience look like? We set out many challenges, and in one area, in our Westport area in Scotland, we developed a tech hub, which was co-created with our tenants. And in this tech hub, we showcase different technologies that are available to people that could help them live independently for longer. More importantly, this space allows for an immersive, hands-on experience for our tenants to overcome digital barriers and build confidence using the technology, hearing about how it can support and exploring it further. It's been a space where we've been able to bring tenants along with their families and friends, explore technology-enabled care devices, but also consumer tech, and helping build an understanding of what is on the market and how tailored solutions can support people in their home environment. We set out to understand and tackle digital inequalities. We carried out surveys with our tenants to gather information about how customers, our staff and external partnerships feel about digital technology, and I'll look more at that later on. And we also explored preventative and AI software and how that can support our care teams use data-driven insights to offer truly personalised support plans. We have, and we're continuing to trial predictive and analytical AI technology in some of our tenants' homes to test certain preventative technologies, measuring the effect it can have on people's lives to explore integrating into our service offerings. And we're continuing to engage with local authorities, housing regulators and policy decision makers in Scotland to explore how tech can be aligned with the prevention and intervention agenda. And we heard from Roy earlier saying that funding's one of the big barriers, and it absolutely is. And last but not least, by all means, is co-production. At Build, I'm going to be honest, we thought we worked well with our tenants. However, it became very clear that in terms of service offerings, we definitely had room for improvement. And through TAPPI, we've created our first co-production strategy, which is currently being rolled out across all our departments to ensure that our tenants are included in all aspects of decision-making that affects their lives, their tenancies, as we progress forward. A great example of this was recently our customer experience team took a draft plan for our new independent living model to our tenant forum to engage and explore the content and ensure that from a tenant's point of view that we're on the right path, aligned, and to achieve the best service possible for our tenants. So when it comes to embedding the TAPPI to inform our future, at Build we've taken our learnings and we're embedding this through the full organisation. TAPPI's helped shape our 5-year corporate and business plan, which we launched late last year, and that's got a focus of 4 key areas. We've set up a SAMS programme, which is our strategic asset management strategy, and this is where we're looking at our developments to ensure they're fit for ageing in place, retrofitting current stock and new builds. And within the strategy, we're exploring approaches to ensure our standard design allows for ease of adaptation in future years, and changes to a tenant's home will have minimum disruption as changes are needed to meet the tenant's changing needs. We've recently put our draft, as I was saying, of our independent living model to our tenants for review. Now, the Scottish Government's vision is for older people in Scotland to enjoy full and positive lives in homes that meet their needs. The National Care Review and the Digital Health and Care Strategy promote the greater integration of technology-based solutions to help people live healthier for longer and age in place as a policy. It's winning approval from all sides, and rightly so. Not least those who wish to see hospital admissions reduce and move into care homes delayed for as long as possible. However, and unfortunately, ageing in the right place is a complex and sensitive issue, and at Build, we're looking to harness our findings from TAPPI to shape and co-design a service offer for our tenants, which will allow Build to offer services including meal services, care at home, and the right technology intervention based on that person's needs at that moment in time, at the right time, to support maintain their independence and ability to live at home. When I mentioned our co-production strategy, this has been rolled out across all Build departments, with our customer policy and standards team taking lead to ensure that all departments are confident in understanding true co-production and ensuring that this is part of all strategic projects and service designs moving forward. We've held workshops around what does co-production mean to me on an individual level, but also what does co-production mean to me within my department. We've also got a governance and programme board set up within Build, and the co-production and the TAPPI principles are embedded into that, and it forms any part of our strategic business plans as we move forward. And then last but not least, we've got our digital strategy. Sorry, I think I've got some feedback there. So sorry, last but not least is a digital strategy. We're exploring our next steps in terms of connectivity. At Build, whilst we've got a digital alarm receiving centre and a programme that works with over 82% of our stock talking digitally in terms of technology-enabled care, we're exploring the next steps and how we can explore providing internet access to all areas of our buildings, free of charge for our tenants, not just in communal areas. We're looking to implement a digital refresh at our sites for our tenants to ensure ease of connection and connectivity to our newly launched My Build app, and further enhance our digital impact to benefit our tenants. With that comes the workforce. We can't assume that our workforce are digitally enabled, and through some survey results where over 352 staff participated, whilst our employees are comfortable when it comes to technology for personal use, only 28% of those staff surveyed felt confident in supporting others with technology. And that's where we work with the TAPPI wider group, the TSA, for example, and exploring the virtual house where we can build our tech know-how to enable that, which I'm sure we may hear more of later. So some key insights just to finish up on through our journey. The first one I put up we found interesting was our digital literacy. A lot of assumptions are made that older people don't wish to engage with technology. But we've had, at the point of the surveys being complete, over 492 tenants engage with our tech hub and carry out a survey for us. And out of the 492 tenants, 48% were not connected with their own broadband. Only 41% of tenants would feel comfortable having sensors collecting data in their home. 72% of our tenants advise they often feel lonely. A further 68% of tenants advise they're not aware that technology could support interactions with family or friends. Now, this was done on the back of COVID, and as you can imagine, connectivity increased during COVID. That seemed to be an enabler for technology, but that was a staggeringly high number of our tenants who were still unaware of that. But the most interesting point that we noticed after the visit to the Tech Hub and building on the understanding of technology was 87% of our tenants advised they're interested in discovering more about how technology can support. And then the final insight, I wanted to touch on the predictive and analytical AI technology. Integration and interoperability of solutions are going to be key for success. We've seen the revised TAPPI principles, and it has to be seamless. It's got to be cost effective. The right technology at the right time can positively impact on how we deliver our services, and barriers relating to digital literacy can be overcome, and we're seeing that in Build. It's taken its time, but we're getting there. And finally, to successfully enable aging at home, technology has to be explored and incorporated into adaptations, be that via housing adaptations or into health and social care packages as we move forward. The big question always comes down to, where does the money come from? Is it fair for our tenants to be funding this across the board when not all tenants will be utilising the technology? But actually, is there that wider piece, those policy drivers and decision makers that can embed this into our practice as we move forward? And Roy mentioned that drive for the strategic independent living model, if you like, or framework, and that's where I could see that fitting in. I'd like to thank you for your time today, and I believe when I stop sharing my screen, I'm going to be passing over to Louise.
Thank you, Gary. Good afternoon, everybody. Lovely to be with you today. My name's Louise Lee. I'm Head of Specialist Housing for Platform, which basically covers all of our supported living properties and our retirement housing. We also provide a falls response service for the NHS in Worcestershire and young people services. I'm here with my colleague Dan Rock, who will talk to us a little bit later about how Platform have embedded their TAPPI experience and some of our key insights. Gary, you're going to put us to shame because you just delivered a very detailed presentation, which is fabulous, but ours is very much headlines, and we can share some more detailed slides. It's very much an overview from us today, because we know that we've got so much we want to share as a collective. So some headlines from us. Platform's got close to 50,000 properties across the country. We're like a wonky waistband across the middle of the country, with a portfolio of around 3,500 retirement houses and properties, which is where we focused our TAPPI learning. We were really excited to be able to apply to be part of TAPPI, because the proposed principles and the whole ethos around it aligned very much to the way Platform was going in terms of working and wanting to explore more so the use of technology in our services with our older customers, but all of our customers. You know, we'd all just come through the experience of the pandemic with COVID, which really focused the mind in terms of the demands of society, how much, you know, having lived through COVID, it was all about digital kind of like interactions, and we very much saw that impacted very closely our older customers, where maybe there was still an awful lot of fear, if you like, around the use of technology that some of us take for granted, just in terms of using mobile phones, social media, WhatsApp, you know, lots of different things out there, which is just frightening and confusing in itself. And you know, I class myself as a tech dinosaur, and I'm sure Dan would quietly confirm that for all of you. But on another day, hey Dan. So Platform wanted to get involved. We had recently launched a refreshed corporate strategy, which very much focused on the use of digital and technology advancement. So it aligned with that. As I said, we were very aware of the impact of COVID, the changing demands of society, and we also internally were very conscious of digital switchover coming. We are the product of 5 other mergers with other housing associations, so we had lots of legacy analog systems out there in our services and our properties. So we needed to come up with solutions for making sure that we were digitally fit and ready. So TAPPI, for all of those reasons, was absolutely right for us and has given us a fabulous learning. We already prided ourselves in terms of customer engagement, but again, like Gary said, it really focused the mind when you think you're good, but actually it really, you know, every day's a school day and always something to learn and do better. So I'm going to hand over to Dan, who's going to give us an overview of how the platform TAPPI experience, how we've embedded that, and our key insights. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Dan, Technology Enabled Care Project Officer at Platform Housing Group. Firstly, we couldn't possibly have carried out our TAPPI projects, let alone begin to embed learnings from it, without partnership working. So that's partnership working with everybody on this panel. And just to reflect what Gary says, thank you to everybody for the opportunity and the support that we've had over the last 12, 18 months. But also with Community Housing's Technology Enabled Care services. So our extensive retirement housing stock and resourcing opportunities allowed by Dunhill's funding, combined with their tech expertise, created a great foundation to the project, and it's a foundation we continue to build on. I was asked to give 2 key insights. Well, don't run before you can walk is certainly true. I found myself wanting to get carried away in the early days, but we focused on getting the basics right, dispelling myths, trialing simple technology-enabled care devices, and just ensuring that we bring back everything back to the need of the individual and try not to be influenced by highly polished sales pitches and the expectations of others. Secondly, and the most blinding insight and the most important one I can share with anyone looking to further embed technology into their services, is to factor in support and reassurance, which is reflected in the revised TAPPI principles very clearly. Support not just at the start either. It needs to be regular, it needs to be ongoing, and it needs to be tailored to best fit the needs of individuals, their learning styles, and it needs to include colleagues as well as residents. I think in hindsight, being a little bit critical of myself, I was blinkered on customer engagement and support, and should maybe invested just a little bit more time assessing the level of exposure our colleagues have had towards technology, excuse me, and opened up more discussions on why we were and why we still are on this journey. It's something we've worked on improving since TAPPI as we continue to regenerate our existing stock and build new developments with technology in mind, by ensuring open communication is encouraged with residents and frontline staff before, during and after. Thinking realistically in terms of resource and time, it's those frontline staff that can be the biggest advocates for the implementation of technology into residents' homes. And so I think the proper investment in training, encouraging a positive attitude to change as well, is crucial, particularly when it comes to that T word, technology, because it does often have frightening connotations to some people, particularly those in rural locations or those who might have worked in more manual jobs and so haven't had the exposure to modern methods of interaction that we're all so used to. So that was a bit of a whirlwind overview within a few minutes, I know. Thank you very much. More than happy for anybody to contact myself and Lou with any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. That's really, really helpful. And I think, are we going to Pobble next, I believe?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Over to you, Vicky.
Hi, everyone. I think Sally's going to share some slides for me. While she's loading those, I'll just give a little background to Pobble. Yes, there they are. Brilliant. Thank you. So yeah, Pobble was the only Welsh testbed out of the 6 partners. So we're flying for the flag for Wales today. So we're based in Southeast Wales with services right across the M4 corridor, from Newport in the east right the way through to West Wales. Can you give the next slide, please, Sally? Thanks. So yeah, that's just a few stats on the type of services we provide. So whilst we're a housing provider, we've also got a very significant care and support portfolio, which is very much in our minds when we were thinking about TAPPI, because whilst we do have an old person's portfolio, and that was the driver for our kind of involvement in TAPPI, we also had a real mind to the fact that we've got a really complex, varied portfolio of services, and that there were huge opportunities across those other services for technology-enabled care as well. So we wanted to kind of have a view to the fact that there were other client groups that would benefit from technology-enabled care, and really keen to learn what we could around the kind of flexibility and adaptability of some of the technology to those other client groups along our journey. I should say that I'm here today as Pobble, but we've recently merged just a couple of weeks ago, actually, with another organisation called Link. So actually, so Link are actually part of the Pobble group now, and they have a far larger old person's portfolio than we do in terms of extra care, etc. So our learning from TAPPI will be certainly informing the discussions we're having with Link around what our digital offer and what our services look like, you know, in terms of technology-enabled care going forward as we start that kind of merger integration process. Next slide, please. So just in terms of where Pobble were at really as an organisation when we came into TAPPI, we certainly weren't experts in the assistive technology arena. I would say, like a lot of organisations, we dipped our toe in to various kind of pilot projects. We tried a few things, but relatively small scale until that point. However, we did certainly recognise that in order to future-proof our services, we need to have much more of a strategic focus on our technology offer. The concept of tech to the maxes was one of the strengths in our corporate strategy a few years ago, where we really, you know, where we set out our kind of aspirations around this. So I would say that the kind of the appetite and the ambition was there around taking up the opportunities that technology offered for our customers, and what TAPPI did was give us the kind of impetus and the kind of, you know, a practical way forward to actually start delivering on that strategy through the opportunity to try out some things in practice. Next slide, please. So we focused our activity within an extra care scheme in Swansea and West Wales. So we had a real mix of customers with you know, very varied needs within that scheme. Some people living very independently, but for whom actually kind of loneliness, isolation, and more preventative well-being was a challenge, right through to people with much higher care needs, including dementia, mobility issues, and sensory loss. So we had, you know, a real a microcosm, I suppose, of needs, and you know, an opportunity to test out a real variety of solutions and make it really person-centered within one scheme. And the solutions that we eventually landed on, I think helped us kind of understand that variety of solutions and how we could address a variety of needs, and be very flexible and adaptive, because I think we always had a view to the fact that as people's needs change, people don't want new technology taken in and new things, technology taken out and new things put in. People want one system that can kind of adapt with them. So as we do that learning and training and improve people's confidence, we want to kind of build on that and not kind of undo all that by constantly chopping and changing what we're delivering. So we wanted a really flexible, adaptable offer that we could give to people that was really integrated. We've talked about interoperability. That's a term that I didn't know before we started working on TAPPI, and it soon became part of my vocabulary. But that integration, interoperability, seamless service is absolutely crucial and was a real priority for us in the solution that we were looking for. Next slide, please. We had quite a slow start actually in our TAPPI journey in terms of actually being able to deliver some technology and try out the principles. And I think one of the reasons for that was the more we started talking about TAPPI and digital transformation and everything else that as an organisation we were trying to achieve, it became apparent that there were lots of other things going on that were really closely aligned to the TAPPI principles, and you know, that we needed to consider this in a much broader context than just technology enabled care. So at the same time as us getting involved in the TAPPI project, we had a programme of work going on to deliver customer broadband. Field have mentioned that they've got a similar project going on. They're really keen to offer broadband at scale to our customers. And so that was a program that was going on already around broadband connectivity, etc. Really closely aligned to TAPPI, because as has already been mentioned, you know, it's a really kind of that basic infrastructure is so important with whatever you're trying to deliver for customers. At the same time, we have an asset management strategy that's increasingly using technology and digital solutions around kind of you know, around building management type of solutions. So you know, really understanding our buildings around damp and mold and fire risk and repairs and maintenance. You know, there's a whole kind of piece of work that's going on from asset management around that. And we thought actually, you know, some of this needs to be integrated and talk to each other as well. Likewise, we were going through a process of upgrading our approach to electronic care planning, and looking for a new system to support our care planning approach. And again, we wanted to make sure that whatever we were putting in was that, you know, that as far as possible it was all talking to each other. So we started talking in terms of a digital ecosystem rather than sort of specific pockets of work. But what we learned is that if you want to do that, you have to really take the time to look at integration, and you've got to have the right people involved. And I'll talk about that in the next slide, because yeah, the skills and expertise around this is really, really important, and the people that you've got around your table at the organisation to enable you to think in this space and to see the longer term, bigger strategic opportunities around some of this is really, really important. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so mentioned interoperability and how important it was for us, for the people that we were delivering, so the specific group of customers, so at a really operational level, but also in terms of that big strategic approach. So, you know, us not wanting to put in technology solutions that were going to only work for a specific purpose and not talk to all these other kind of digital solutions that we've gotten in for going in for different purposes. That's really, really hard, and I can't say that we've nailed it yet, but we've certainly tried to, and it's been our focus, and it's been a real priority for us. But it is like the kind of golden chalice out there of you know, being able to find the things that do talk to each other. And I would say having experts who really understand the technology and understand what the opportunities are there and understand how you can possibly tweak that technology in a way that does make it work for your existing systems, etc., has been really important. So for me, getting our director of technology and our IT team involved in this was absolutely crucial. And I would say that the expertise from external organisations, people like the TSA, who can help you navigate what is a really, really complex and varied market, is you know, absolutely invaluable. There is expertise out there, and you know, don't be afraid to ask for help and use it, because we certainly benefited from that. Basic infrastructure connectivity has been mentioned a lot already, but I can't stress how fundamental it is. So much of the technology that's going on is based around having great quality Wi-Fi from a safety and security perspective as well. You want to make sure, you want to be absolutely confident that that's going to work and not fail. So yeah, lots of work going into that kind of basic provision. I've mentioned the technical support, but the other bit is around the leadership and vision from within an organisation. It's absolutely got to come from the top down, and people have talked about their strategies around this already, and certainly for us, TAPPI has definitely informed our whole digital transformation strategy. It's far more than a pilot in one scheme. It's about what are the types of services we want to be providing in 5 or 10 years time, and what is the journey that we need to go on to deliver that. And I think my colleagues in the other test beds are talking in similar language really about this being much more than a pilot in a local area. It starts there, but it's very much about that kind of much bigger strategy, but that you need the buy-in around that. You kind of need that vision and that top-down leadership in order to give that the momentum within an organisation. Next slide, please. I think this is my last slide. Yeah, and I suppose some of the things we're still grappling with then really around future challenges, and some of these things have been mentioned already. We always had a vision to scale in this, so not just doing this in one extra care scheme, but about having an offer that could benefit any customer who needed technology-enabled care. Again, we're not there yet. We're at the very start of our journey at that, but that's certainly our ambition and our aspiration. And yeah, but thinking in that space is certainly a challenge, because it takes us from a housing provider essentially who do care and support into a technology provider, and that brings with it lots of other challenges around resources, capacity, skills, you name it. So yeah, as I say, absolutely the aspiration is there, but the scale is a challenge. Funding models, yeah, and linked to that, sort of commissioning arrangements. Few of them in England have been mentioned. Obviously, we've got a different regime in Wales in terms of how some of this stuff is funded, and the kind of policy environment is different. But yeah, that question about who pays for what do we charge back, how do we make it affordable, what level of investment from government and health and other partners is going into this whole arrangement. It's made us have some different and interesting and challenging conversations with some of our partners, and I think that conversation will continue both at a local level and nationally. Data and privacy, we've had to have lots of conversations around consent and all of that really practical stuff when you're kind of moving into an area and collecting data that you didn't have before. These are just some of the operational challenges that come with delivering a project like this, as all of the other partners will tell us. But if you're going to do that at scale, again, lots of things to sort out. But again, the support from the wider project group on sharing stuff around this, and some of the resources that have been provided to help with that have been really, really useful. And then I suppose linked to the funding is how we really understand the impact. If as a sector we're going to invest on that, how we consistently measure the value that we're generating, the return on the investment of some of this stuff. We know intrinsically that it does that. We know that prevention is absolutely the way to go, and we can see through some of the case studies and the outcomes that have been delivered that this is absolutely the right way to be investing, and the way that our policies and strategies need to be going. But it's how we put a monetary value on that and really make the case around that to the people that need to hear it. And TAPPI's been great at starting to make the case for that, but I think there's collectively as a sector there's clearly more work to do on that. So I think that's all I've got in my slides. I'm not around for the Q&A, unfortunately. I need to go at 4:30, but my contact details are there, so I'm really happy to be contacted outside of this if anyone wants to talk in any more detail about anything I've said, or got any questions after the event. So thank you.
Thank you, Victoria. That's great. And now we're going to hear from Wiltshire Council's experience and hand over to Lindsay. And just while we're changing presenters, if anyone does have any questions, please do use the Q&A box at the bottom, and then we can look at them when we get to them at the end of the day.
I think you're on mute, Lindsay. Sorry.
Thank you very much. We love that. I'll try again. Are we good? Everyone happy now? Yeah. You see everything? Great. So my name's Lindsay Millen. I'm a Senior Commissioner at Wiltshire Council. I'm one of 2 councils that took part in the TAPPI principles, and Haringey was the others. They're not here today, so it's a very good opportunity to see it from a perspective of the council. We are Wiltshire Council. We look after 500 residents within our setting, and we're quite a rural county, which in parts sets some problems in itself around the connectivity. So I am actually going to focus on 2 areas: connectivity and training. So those are the 2 areas I'm going to talk in part. To do a bit of scene setting, just wanted to let you know I'm just having a little bit of a problem. Bear with me. There we go. Wanted to just do a bit of a scene setting of where we were. We were in an extra care setting, of which there were 48 flats. And in that area, they had a communal lounge, cafe warden, room and system, and they had care staff and outside space. So it was a relatively large area with difficult spaces. Of the 48 customers, 16 signed up, and we had I think there's about 15 to 20 care staff, as well as dom care staff that go in on a separate register. And those are the individuals that we were working with, as well as friends, family, and the care circle around them. Again, quite different to the other settings. About half of our funding went to an occupational therapist, and we wanted to understand how our residents who were Care Act eligible, but also outside the Care Act eligibility, could use technology-enabled care within that setting. So the customers, in my mind, that we worked with were those in receipt of care and those outside eligibility, the staff that we were working with, and also those support networks and individuals coming into, and the services coming into that extra care setting. So we've spoken a little bit about TAPPI 2. So the areas that we really focus on were adaptability, choice-led, outcome-focused, person-centred, inclusive, interoperability, and co-production. Those are the ones we kind of worked on around what we wanted to achieve from. I don't understand why my number, it's not moving. I'm very afraid about this. I can't get to number 4. Let me see if I can give it a go.
I've got your slides as well if you wanted me to.
Thank you, Sally.
Yeah,
I think we've moved on. So as I mentioned, we had an OT. Her name was Elizabeth. She was wonderful, and she's actually got a case study on the HousingLIN, and her understanding of how she's experienced the progression of that role to how it needs to be to move forward, to be around person-centred and prevention, was kind of key to how we wanted to interpret the TAPPI principles at the extra care setting. The reason why it was very important for the devices that we wanted to use from the assessments that were taken from those individuals is around the connectivity and how that setting worked for the devices that we were wanting to use for our individuals. We had to retrofit, and we worked with Apello on that out of the Housing 21 care setting. So Apello retrofitted the setting, and they had to put additional Wi-Fi hubs throughout our setting, as well as additional coverage out in the laundry room, the garden, around the bin area, and additional on each floor, so we could actually ensure that the connectivity of that building in the area that it was in, so it was just outside Royal and Bassett, so we had some connection issues anyway, allowed us to use the devices that we wanted to use. Upon taking forward the project and using some of the devices, it was quite apparent that we did need backup, and so we did use individual dongles as well within those rooms. And so we just wanted to make sure that when we were rolling out the devices and working with the individuals we were working with, they felt very confident in that they would have connection at the time that they wanted to use the devices that we were helping them take forward. I think what Dan said is really, really key. You need to have confident individuals, you need to have confident staff, you need to have confident service users, and you need to have confident family and friends to support their individuals to work with the devices that we're trying to promote. Technology is a word that people get scared of. It was quite apparent in some of the workshops that we engaged with our customers, and through that engagement, we really found a need for one-to-one sessions, and through that sort of co-production with our customers, we found AbilityNet, which are a national charity and who have volunteer digital champions, and they came in and worked with our service users. And there's some great stories, and just the confidence in those individuals, but also the staff in understanding that they can support those individuals, they can support those customers in helping themselves be more independent, and they have the confidence to go out in the community and access the community. You know, just having access to everyday technology, and we found that was the key. Everyday technology. It doesn't have to be some of the devices that are out there through some of our providers. Some of the Alexas, the smart technology was real key in making a key difference to individuals with high care needs. For example, you've got Vicky there. Again, she did provide a case study that's on the HousingLIN, who's paraplegic, but the ability for her to use her voice to just start to turn the TV on, make a cup of tea, put the blinds up, put the radio on, put a favourite radio show on, listen to the weather. All of that became more accessible for her. So that was really a really great thing to see, and other customers within that setting started to see the confidence shine out of those service users. And as I said, it was very, very important for us to make sure that when somebody wanted to use a tech device, that the connection worked well. So again, I'm just trying to go on to the next slide. Bear with me. I think it's on about the fourth click. It seems to work. So I'll give it another go. There we go. So that's around the connectivity. What also was very key, and again, the second thing I'm going to focus on was the training. We found the confidence in the staff wasn't very apparent in rolling out the training, whether that be they use it in their home life or whether they don't use it in their home life. They weren't confident enough to take forward and advise the customers. So there was some training given to the staff on site, but also that was a real highlight for us and how we moved forward, taking TAPPI forward at Wiltshire Council, and I'll speak a little bit more about that in a moment. I also wanted to just say thank you very much to all the other test beds, because I learned a huge amount from the other tech beds and how they were using tech lounges and how they found that really beneficial with the customers, but also to staff. And I think that's another key thing that we've learned. Co-production has been instrumental in highlighting where the need is from the customer's perspective, not what we think it should be, what they want it to be, and how we work with them to make them feel confident in moving forward every day to make sure that they can be more independent in where they choose to live. And that, again, will be rolled out into our services moving forward at Wiltshire. The systems, what was really apparent, again, from having an OT through the referral process and the assessment, is our systems and processes need to be adapted to be more user-friendly for our staff, to be able to process requests easier, and also for reporting, for us to understand how the benefits are realised from using tech. So there's a huge amount of work at the moment around benefit realisation of tech and us understanding what it will mean in the future and how it will support our workforce. Everybody knows the workforce in the social care is under threat, and how people, you know, the numbers are limited and how there's just spaces. So tech is an opportunity to complement our workforce and make it easier for them on a day-to-day basis and looking forward. And also through our procurement of housing stock and how we support everyday living moving forward. TAPPI's really given us some insight about what we need to think about. And last but not least, I just wanted to say, through TSA and how we've worked with them, they've been instrumental in supporting us through training and the training modules that have been produced out of TAPPI, and also Virtual House. We've bought the license, we've trained our staff, we've up to about 500 staff at the moment. We're developing a learning and development hub around tech, and yeah, it's a real opportunity around culture change and how we work with our staff, but also we know our residents through a piece of engagement work have said they can't see, they can't touch, they can't understand what tech is, which is why we're doing more work around a tech lounge, so people can see, touch and understand practically what tech can do for them. I think that might be me. And thank you very much. I'm going to hand over for key findings, as I understand. Can we stop sharing? We haven't stopped sharing. Is that me? We're good. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. It's great. So yeah, as you said, we're going to now move to the next section of the agenda, which is around key finding and tools. And we're going to start with Nathan Downing at TSA. Over to you, Nathan.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much. I shall follow Lindsay's lead, and let's see if my slides want to play ball. I think ultimately the beauty of going at this stage of things is that you've heard so much from everybody else, and actually they're the real stars. They're the people that tell you what really happened, what they've learned from, as well as some of the real successes. So I was busily in the background changing my slides rapidly because most of the stuff I was planning to say everybody said already. So rather than just repeating it, I'll rattle through. But I think most importantly, this is all about the beauty of partnerships. So TSA, we're absolutely delighted to be a key part of working on all these partners for the last 2 years or so. And now the exciting part is how do we work with all of you to really embed some of this? So as it says there, how do we move from the policy or from the paperwork into practice and then into implementation? And I think Lindsay summed it really well right at the end. This isn't the end of the journey. It's actually, well, where do we go next? And now we've developed certain tools. How do we then start to make it more visible and transparent to those that draw on care and support? How do people touch and feel stuff? So there is no end really for me in this. It's actually how do we take it further, and most importantly, how do we all learn from each other? So that's hence my ramble as I move on to the first slide. As I'm sure you're familiar with all of the different partners involved, that's what the beauty of partnership was. Nobody had all the answers, and I think that's equally now. We're keen to hear back from people going forward about, well, what is it you've learned? So I know at some point you'll be able to get on, you'll know the link to the website. So I have put it a few times, but no, I don't want to steal Jerome's thunder because he'll probably do a lot more of that. But for me, it has to be hand in hand, that co-production approach, making sure the workforce feel confident and comfortable. Nobody needs to be an expert in technology, but everybody that works alongside those that draw on care and support, they have their expertise in both their professional but also their personal life of where technology can play a role. And it isn't about the widgets and the gadgets. It's very much about that wraparound service enabled by technology. So it is technology enabled care, frankly, could do without the care part and do like the technology. And it's actually all about enabling people. And for some, that's finding solutions to access the community safely, as well as those that might need to draw on support more around personal care needs. And those simple tools, as we learned from everybody to develop. So helping them to know, where do we start when we start to talk to technology suppliers around what outcomes we want to achieve? How do we have that conversation to be always about outcomes and not led by technology? And therefore, some of the tools like that person-centered tech approach sitting there. Other people couldn't get past the fact that, well, how do we get our colleagues in information governance to understand what we're trying to do and don't see the data that's flowing around the system as a barrier? So how do we have a simple questionnaire, which means everybody can use it all on the same page, and then we understand what we're trying to do with the technology and the data, but most importantly, that suppliers are put on notice to say, you have to help us understand how you can keep everybody safe, and don't just assume that we'll be blinded by the fact that you can sign up to certain, data security standards or cybersecurity, etc. Really show us this sort of stuff. And the bottom one, and this is particularly the case in Pobble, use case and scenarios. That's where we want solution suppliers to really work with us. Tell us how you can deliver outcomes for people. Don't give us a demonstration of your latest widgets. And how do we almost take that dragons down approach to saying, show us something? And indeed, from a TSA point of view, we're carrying on with that sort of approach around the country now, as we do lunch and learn sessions all over the place, trying to get people to understand what's there, and then frankly to give those that supply solutions a good grilling. Tell us how it really works. And led to that was obviously the tech, which I know people like Deborah will come and talk. And again, I don't want to steal her thunder, as she does it far better than I. But there's tech everywhere, and that's the simple bit. But really, what is it people want to achieve? So smart speakers linked to devices around the home to open your curtains. Robotic vacuum has been the big hitter. Help people want to be proud of their home, but sometimes don't have the mobility to allow them to do what they were used to able to do. So robot vacuums around. A lot of this stuff is things that you can find on the high street. It doesn't have to be specialist equipment, but really you do definitely need people to help you understand how to use it, how to be engaged with it. And that's where the touching and feeling comes into it as well. And as linked through to Gary and others, getting those technology companies on calls or face-to-face with those very residents to be able to say to them what they think will work for them and what they won't think will work for them. I think that's where the suppliers need to learn more. So if you ask any technology supplier, they may well say, yes, we're engaged in co-production. Then you challenge them to say, what does that really mean to you? And therefore, how can be part of our work going forward? And the virtual house tool that has been developed, pre TAPPI, but was really tested by those that are out in the community to understand how do we want our workforce to feel confident in the role that technology can play without feeling they have to be an expert in every widget or have to know a catalogue of equipment. How do we get people to focus on the needs, the outcomes, the wants, and then work with their partners to find those solutions? So I'll skip over this one because that's the bit I think will come later on. There you can access all this sort of materials, all of the feedback from all the different sites, all of the stories, all the videos that really help you to use those tools to resonate, whether it be with the community, whether it be your staff, whether it be your corporate management, really getting to the heart of what this can do for you and how you have that movement of change going forward. But if nothing else, this Lenten piece for me is a question for everybody on the call. How could you all embed the principles that we'll go through within your organization and some of the key elements that we found? And there's lots of them, but I guess a few stand out and a few have been referenced already. First of all, those TAPPI principles and the learning, how can you apply them to all of your own tech-related activity from a procurement point of view, and indeed in general commissioning? We're starting to see that really strongly. So not just asking people questions around quality and safety, etc., but clearly, how do you embed that to challenge those suppliers and service providers to tell them how they think they can adapt and utilize the TAPPI principles in their support? So in the recent consortium procurement tech framework, the biggest of its kind in the UK, every supplier and service provider was asked to say how they would actually embed those principles into their learning. In the region of the country we're working in at the moment with an ADAS group, that's exactly the challenge we put to their healthcare and housing board. How can we embed these into all of your activity? Quality is paramount. Ensuring you have those that are certified to the quality standards framework from a TSA perspective is crucial, so that you know you've got quality at the heart of things. We've mentioned about connectivity. It is a right and vital element of supporting independence. Without it, people can be left isolated, but it needs connectivity from a technical point of view, but also connectivity from maintaining those connections with the community. And the co-production ethos is absolutely vital. What we found in TAPPI was the co-production element took far longer than we'd ever envisaged because we didn't necessarily understand exactly how to start that movement going. And at the bottom, anything that you do, how do we measure that for, what's that mechanism of measurement to prove the impact, then frankly, to then take it to the next stage? I think they're the things hopefully you can all learn and hopefully embed into your services. And that's my ramble over. Hopefully I'm on time to bring us back on schedule. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. That's great. And now we're going to move to Deborah, who is representing co-production works because unfortunately Jolie and Pete can't be with us. Deborah is a co-production champion on the Haringey testbed. So Deborah, over to you.
You're muted, Deborah, as well.
I'm so excited to get started. So, oops, on my camera. Yeah. Right, I'm Deborah, as everyone said. I was one of the champions for Haringey testbed. And my role was mainly, I feel like the middleman, those of you old-time days, Arthur Bailey and the rest of them, with the residents and the project management. So my role was involved in speaking to the residents and make sure that they're happy with everything that was happening and their choices they were making, and then also supporting the project manager, who was then going to implement the technology for Cambridge to come back and evaluate it. It sounds straightforward, but it's not, because I think co-production is important in all of this, especially when you're dealing with people who you don't know, and you don't know what sort of organization you're going in or housing situation, because you'll often find between residents and management, there is a lot of maybe sometimes distrust and different things, and residents may often feel that, okay, what are they going to do to me? So co-production, you have to implement, you have to show, discuss what co-production is about, and it's working together as a team, you know, and it was really done. How we did it was beautiful. We went, TAPPI came and discussed with us, because I was also part of it, and asked us, how can technology help and enable us to live a better life? Now, it wasn't a set sort lot of question. We just had a discussion, and I've been saying for the last over a year how it helped me. My biggest thing was getting curtain, a device that was able to open my curtain for me. Didn't know something was like on the market like that, and all I have to do is get my phone, press a button, and the curtains open. That I'm a wheelchair user, and that was the most difficult thing for me, and the most frustrating, because I'm very independent, very confident in everything I do, and like most winters, I didn't open my window, my bedroom window curtain, because by the time I go through all the pain and effort to do it, it's time to shut it again. And the pleasure of being able to do it, for the first couple of days, I was just opening, close, opening, close, opening, close. I loved it, you know. So where the other residents was concerned, we had lots of conversation with them, things that was able to enable help them live a more independent life. A lot of them wanted things such as a Hoover. We had loads of robotic Hoover, and there was like some had devices that would tell them for medication and different things like that. We had the gentleman who had sat nav, the tracker. You know, we thought there was something wrong with his one, and then, you know, but he wouldn't tell management. They kept saying to me, Deborah, his is not working. And where I came in as now, I know the residents and I know the Darshan and the team that was involved. It's easy for me to get an honest reply back. And it so happened that every time he went out, and the days that he went to the bookies, he switched it off. So he didn't want them to know he had the bookies. And that is how co-production worked brilliantly. So we was a circle, we were a unit, and we all worked well together, you know. And so I think TAPPI was needed and still is needed, because if you look now, I always say to people, listen to the news, the NHS, everything, older people is being blamed for everything, you know. NHS is in a state because older people is living longer, but they help build so much, and it's good to be able to give them back something at this point in their life, and also not do to them, but ask them. Because now that the project is over in Haringey, if you go back into all the participants' house, they're still using their devices. We have other resident now who wasn't part of the project, who now wants to know, how can I go about this? Me, for one, as I said, I'm still using all the devices I have. You know, we have the curtain, I have also the Hoover and different things like that. So there was a need, you know, and TAPPI, I hope this is not the last of TAPPI. There should be a lot more to do with TAPPI.
Thank you, Deborah. That was great as usual. I just yeah, it's a real shame, unfortunately, but thank you for standing in for co-production works today. It's a real shame they couldn't join us, but I will show you once when I give you my presentation later, where you can find a report of what co-production works and the co-production champions did during the project, and all the various tools that you can use to embed co-production in your services. I think we're going to show one of the great outputs from the co-production champions was a set of animations that were co-produced with the TAPPI champions, and these animations were created with the purpose to be used by staff and relatives to show tenants in order to ease the potential fears they may have and help them to make choices about technology. So Sally is going to play one of them now, and I'll show you where you can find the other one after.
Hello, I'm Gloria. I was born in St. Lucia and came to England in 1955. I worked hard and made a good life. I was a nurse in the NHS for nearly 45 years and raised 6 children. When I first arrived, it was hard to find somewhere to stay. Some places had signs outside saying, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. In some ways, things have changed for the better. I've got a mixed-race great-granddaughter now, and when I hear her say, Grandma, I don't see black or white. I live in a flat in what they call sheltered housing. When Janice, a staff member, asked me what I thought about technology, I felt a bit frightened and a little bit foolish. I'm 88 and I've managed without technology for a lot longer than little Janice has been on God's earth. But Janice was stubborn in a gentle way, asking me lots of questions. I told her I'm happy here in my flat and I don't want to go nowhere else. So when Janice said technology may help me stay here longer, that got me interested. First, she put in this special light, just plugged it into the wall socket. So now if I need to get up in the middle of the night, this light switches on all by itself and lights up my way. These old legs are too tired to drag me to church on Sundays. I really miss that. So what a surprise it was when Janice suggested I go to church on a computer. I said to her, what are you talking about? Do you think I'm a darn fool? But she found my church on the phone, and now each Sunday they set me up with a tablet computer and I can watch the service in my chair sitting in my room. It's not the same as being there, but it is nice to hear the pastor's voice. I've also got a robot hoover, which does the cleaning while I got my feet up. Now, I'm not saying technology can solve all of your problems, and it can't change this terrible English weather, but my advice is to give it a chance, and you might be surprised what it can do for you.
Great, thank you, Sally. So I am now going to hand over to Hannah and Gemma from Cambridge Centre for Housing and Planning Research, who were the evaluation partner for the TAPPI project. Over to you.
Thanks, Jerome. I'll just share the screen. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, perfect.
Fab. So I'm Hannah Holmes. I work at the Cambridge Centre for Housing and Planning Research. So we did the evaluation for TAPPI 2. We conducted interviews and surveys with residents and staff. So those were early on in the process, and then we repeated them as well once the testbed projects were established. And obviously there isn't time to cover everything today, but I'll run through some of the key findings from the evaluation. So the report covers what technologies have been used across the test beds, and we've heard a bit about that today. And the report looks at some of the benefits and drawbacks as well to particular types of devices. But here I'll just give a quick summary of the headline findings about technology overall. So firstly, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. So the test beds used a wide variety of technologies in their projects, and it's clear that individuals' diverse needs and preferences shape the kinds of technology which are appropriate for them. And secondly, technologies that are easy to use and which fit easily into people's everyday routines tend to be favoured. So where technologies are seen as too complicated, they might not get used. So ensuring that a technology not only meets people's needs and aspirations, but also complements their level of digital literacy and their desire to use technologies is essential. The design of technologies as well obviously must take into account diverse needs. Some technologies can be difficult for people to use with certain health conditions, or things like touch screens or sensitive buttons, for example, might be difficult for people with shaky hands to use. And technologies with unappealing or clinical designs might be off-putting for some people as well. So in order to be beneficial, the technologies really need to account for diverse needs and for preferences as well. And there are a number of outcomes for individuals that have been using technologies as part of TAPPI 2, and I'll just highlight some of the most crucial ones very briefly. So improving independence was a key aim for several of the TAPPI 2 projects, and it has been a notable benefit as well for many participants. So that ranges from things like people being able to carry out daily activities like making a cup of tea or turning on lights without assistance, to transformations and confidence, so enabling people to feel able to go out on their own where that might previously not have been possible for them. And the quote on the slide, I won't read it out, but it's from a tenant at one of the test beds who is a wheelchair user and who has limited mobility around her flat. And she now has a tip kettle in her living room that she can access without the help of staff. And that gives her a sense of independence. And several of the technologies trialled through TAPPI 2 were preventative in nature, so helping to monitor health indicators, such as how often a person uses the toilet, for example, ideally to catch issues early and avoid a health crisis. Others enabled residents to keep track of their hydration or provided reassurance about their health. And notably, the system of support that these technologies are embedded in, so that includes responsive teams of staff, are really essential to their functioning, and therefore their impact will vary across different settings. And the quote on the slide here is from a testbed resident with long-term health conditions who's been using mattress sensors, which give her more knowledge really about her health and therefore a sense of control. And an improved sense of safety is a key benefit of technologies used across the TAPPI 2 testbeds. So those improvements often come from people's sense that if they do have a problem, such as a fall, technologies will support them in receiving appropriate care more quickly than if they didn't have those technologies. And others have highlighted that sensors and video doorbells make them feel more secure in their homes, as the quote on the slide indicates. But it's also important to note, as other people have already said, that online safety and fears around that are a real challenge as well, that can reduce people's sense of safety and security if they lack the confidence with the digital technologies that they're using. Taking part in TAPPI 2 has also provided social benefits for some people. So, for example, some TAPPI 2 participants highlight that devices like voice-activated virtual assistants, or like Alexas, provide a sense of company, which can reduce feelings of loneliness, while others note that the process of co-production itself has been really beneficial for them in terms of the social benefits. So it brings people together for regular chats. But it's also notable that some participants were worried that technologies might reduce their opportunities for social interaction by reducing their need for in-person visits from staff. So, for example, the quote on the slide is from a testbed tenant who had avoided using some of the technology that they'd had access to because they worried that it might reduce their social contact, even though that wasn't the plan at the testbed. And there are also key outcomes for families and friends. So the use of technologies was highlighted as providing peace of mind for individuals and for their families. Some technologies that could remind people to take medications, or which tracked movements or falls. They were thought to reduce worries really about relatives' well-being. And as the quote on the slide shows, that was highlighted as enabling more meaningful and enjoyable conversations between individuals and their families beyond simply checking on their well-being. And for families and friends of people using the technologies, improved freedom to go out for a bit longer or not to feel as much need to rush back to check on their loved ones was also a notable benefit of TAPPI 2. So those technologies provide the reassurance remotely, or they improve the independence of service users. And the quote on the slide is from the mother of a young man whose health conditions meant that he had to drink a lot of water. And through TAPPI 2, he'd begun using an Alexa to remind him to have a drink, which meant that his mum didn't need to rush back from work quite as much. And the evaluation highlighted a few key findings that centred on the organisational settings of the projects. So firstly, resourcing was important. Obviously, running a technology project takes a lot of time and energy. and it can be difficult to squeeze in the demands of those projects alongside other day-to-day responsibilities. And so projects with a dedicated project manager might find that easier to manage. Organisational buy-in is obviously also important. So to be successful, projects need support from the very top of the organisation, and that then enables them to leverage the learning from their pilot project and feed into broader organisational strategies that are intended to benefit service users more broadly, so beyond the remit of the original pilot project. Procuring technology for use in the housing and care settings can also present challenges for organisations. So it can be quite tricky to work out which suppliers can deliver a product which will best suit the needs of service users. And so in-house expertise, so from IT teams, for example, can be really beneficial to organisations in supporting that delivery of those technology services at every stage of the design and delivery process. And then finally, lead-in time obviously does shape the delivery of tech projects as well. So it serves as the foundational phase for planning, procuring technology, engaging residents, and ensuring that successful co-production process. So setting up the project can obviously take quite a long time, particularly where foundational requirements like connectivity are not yet in place. So allowing that lead-in time is very important. There is also a need to recognise the broader contexts in which TAPPI 2 projects have taken place. So digital exclusion is an important part of that. Many older people are digitally excluded, either due to lacking reliable internet connections or having a low level of digital skills or confidence or motivation. And that can create barriers to engagement as well in these sorts of projects and limit people's ability to use some forms of technology. And the report does go into more detail about digital exclusion as well. There are also some non-technological considerations that feed into this context. So some buildings are not suitably designed or adapted for individuals' needs. And where that is the case, it can make some everyday activities difficult. And technologies might not always be the best fix for issues that could be solved via other forms of home adaptation, but they might nonetheless provide a useful stopgap for those whose housing circumstances are not suited to their needs. And again, technologies might not always be the sort of single tool to support people's health needs, but they can form part of a useful package of support to support those needs. So I'll just very briefly summarise some of the recommendations made in the report. So technology services and the design of devices should be tailored to individuals' specific needs, keeping in mind that people have different ideas of what they want to get out of using technology, and that if people receive technology that they don't want or need, they're unlikely to use it. Also, technologies should be implemented as part of this package of support, as I said, rather than viewed as a standalone solution. And for people who might have maybe a low level of digital literacy, introducing new technologies gradually can help people to get to grips with them before they then learn to use any further devices. And as I mentioned, a dedicated project manager is a key factor in the success of technology service projects, as is organisational buy-in and bringing all staff on board. And that will include providing information and training. So really understanding the vision of what the technology pilot is aiming to achieve from both the strategic level of an organisation and the operational level means that projects will be better supported in the long run. And then finally, in terms of the operational context, addressing any issues in building suitability prior to or alongside the implementation of technology projects should be carried out in order to support positive outcomes. Digital inclusion is obviously key for many projects. So internet connectivity and digital skills support for both staff and tenants might be required depending on the project. And finally, in order for technology projects like the TAPPI 2 pilots to have long-term impacts, ongoing support will be needed and responsibilities for maintenance of technologies should be clearly set out from the start of the project. So that's all from me. And there is an evaluation toolkit that points towards some useful resources, plus the report, and they're both on the TAPPI web pages if you want to find out more.
Thank you, Hannah. That's great. And I think we're now going to move to the Q&A session. And the first two, actually, Nathan.
Sarah, I think we're moving to Rowan and Jerome.
I'm sorry,
first.
I forgot Rowan and Jerome. Sorry, apologies. Yeah. Ignore me.
Don't worry, Sarah. I'll just share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. So I'm Rowan Atkins. I'm a freelance writer and PR and comms specialist. And my role within TAPPI was to create a lot of the content that we pushed out to raise awareness of the project and communicate the various learnings. And one of the ways that we did that, we did that in kind of 3 key ways. And one of the ways we did that, we began with doing that, was through case studies. But we didn't want to call them case studies. We felt that in many ways that would make the residents feel like the object. We wanted to empower them, so they became in many ways the narrator. So we created personal stories. And that was really kind of key to our ethos with creating content. We wanted to do it in a co-produced way. So the content that we created throughout the project was developed in equal partnership with the tenants and residents and many of the staff members that we worked with. So one of the first things we did was co-produce a sort of series of these personal stories. And we wanted to give, I guess, a flavour of how people were currently using technology, what they felt the barriers were to technology, what the opportunities were, how they were currently using it to support them, and how they wanted things to change. And we communicated that through personal stories that began with me having conversations with tenants and residents that wanted to share their stories. I asked a lot of questions and we built trust up so they felt comfortable with sharing their thoughts and me creating a personal story in their voice. And by doing that, we had a number of different questions we asked, but we also thought quite carefully about the point of view that we wanted to communicate via these personal stories. We wanted to do it in a first-person voice. So it was very much residents telling me their thoughts and me noting them down and creating their story. We also wanted to make the personal stories feel real and to convey their emotions. So this wasn't just about sort of glossing over and saying, oh, technology is wonderful. We wanted to communicate those frustrations, the fears that tenants and residents had, so we could create a really authentic voice, an authentic picture of how they felt about technology and how they needed things to change going forward with TAPPI. The other thing that we really wanted to do was to create a sense of the passions and interests and joys of tenants and residents, because really social care and supported housing is about helping people to do the things they love in the places that they call home. And for me, it was really important to capture that so we could really give colour and paint a picture of these individuals and how they want to use technology going forward. And key to that were capturing images as well. And I'll talk about that in a sec. So I often think, as a comm specialist, I often think that the photos are underrated and people sort of think, oh, they're a bit of an add-on. But for me, you know, photos are absolutely everything. Photos and words, they're very much part of that kind of mix that you can use to communicate messages. And we knew that photos would be essential in bringing the TAPPI stories to life and showing how technology was changing people's lives, how people were frustrated by technology, how they were using it to do the things that they loved. And what we did was build up a sort of pool of photographs which we use throughout communications, whether that's social media, whether that's on the website, whether that's the 6 housing providers using them in reports and bids and evaluations. So there was a real versatility to the pictures that we took. And we also made sure, when I was briefing the photographers who went round our 6 different testbed organisations, I said to them, I don't want any pictures that just focus on the tech or focus on the brands. I want pictures that focus on the people You know, I want to see Dennis there in that red t-shirt, you know, the joy in his face in finding that, you know, BBC good food recipe that he wants to use. He's a massive, you know, loves cooking, or his joy in being able to use to listen to classical music through technology. You know, I want to see Philip there, who's identifying plants in Haringey, and how, you know, that's a real passion of his, how an app on his phone or on his tablet is helping him do that. I want to see Elizabeth, who's an OT in Wiltshire, supporting someone, one of the residents she works with, to again do the things that make his life good and bring his passions alive. So we wanted to capture that sort of joy and curiosity and the interests. And I would really recommend thinking about taking photos in that way. It's such a valuable tool. One practical point is permissions are incredibly important. So we were very thorough in making sure that everyone who was photographed was very happy for us to share those photographs and getting signed permissions in that way. And then the third thing, and these photos always bring a huge smile to my face, it is about press coverage. So we co-produced coverage, media coverage with residents and tenants. We knew it was going to be a great tool to raise awareness of TAPPI locally, but also nationally. But I could only do that with the tenants and residents themselves, and them sharing their stories and giving us permission to share those stories in local press. So again, I had lots of really rich, brilliant conversations, asked lots of questions, made sure that permissions were in place, and I built up that trust. And for example, there's Paul. Paul is holding up there the Southend Echo. So technology has been really instrumental in giving Paul independence in his life. It allows him to go out into the town. It allows him to feel confident to go and watch his favourite team, Southend United, play football and see them lose as well, as he always says. He has a girlfriend. He has a social life. He's eats healthily through using technology. It's really opened up his life. And he shared his story, and we got a great, really positive piece in the Southend Echo. But that was only possible through my working with Paul and him telling his story. And then down in the left-hand side, there's Deborah, who spoke earlier from Haringey. And Deborah is really inspirational. She's an expert in co-production, and she downloaded her thoughts to me about how co-production can work. What are the tips? What's the advice that we could share with other organisations to make it meaningful? And I then wrote that up. And there's there's Deborah's piece in Care Management Matters, which is a really key kind of social care magazine, and Deborah kind of sharing her knowledge in that way. So we created that content together, and again, images really vital, bringing those stories to life. So those are the kind of three pillars through which we, you know, co-produce that content. And the final thing I wanted to say is I've absolutely loved working on TAPPI. And I think the reason is because we co-produced with tenants and residents. And for me, that made it real, and it made it meaningful and authentic. And that was, you know, it was just really, really a great experience doing it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ron. That's great. I second that. Yeah, it was absolutely great to be able to work with residents throughout the project. I'm Jerome Billeter, if I haven't introduced myself yet. I'm the corporate business manager at the HousingLIN, and I'm just going to run you through the TAPPI web pages. So this is where you can find everything that people have been, that all our presenters have been talking about today. So really, what we did with these TAPPI web pages is that we designed them in order to share the learning from the program, but also to inspire and encourage everybody to give TAPPI a try. So early in the program, we decided it was probably best and more accessible to develop HTML pages rather than a long report and a set of tools that would have to be printed. And this way you can really pick and choose which part you're more interested in, whether it's finding what we did during the program, or if it's using the tools and knowledge from the TAPPI program to do it yourself. So the TAPPI website is divided in 4 main sections, which you can either access from the home page, which we're on right now, or on the menu, in the menu on the left-hand side here. So it is divided, as I was saying, in 4 main sections. So the first one is about what is TAPPI and how TAPPI changed us. That's really that's some background information about TAPPI, about the first phase of TAPPI and the second phase, and also here on how TAPPI changed us. It's the list of links to inspiring stories, the program to encourage everybody to give it a try. So they're all the stories which Rowan was just talking about right now. Then if you scroll a bit further down, here you've got an inspiring video. But here you've got the important set of guiding principles, which are one of the cornerstones of TAPPI. So I'll go through these in a minute. If you scroll a bit further down, you've got the how you can do it section, which is all the tools and resources produced by the TAPPI partners to help you adopt the TAPPI principles. And the final section here is the what we learn section, which is the learning from the program, which led to the refinement of the original TAPPI principles and also helped to create an easy-to-use TAPPI framework. Right. So throughout these pages, you'll also find that I was telling you here a video. There's multiple thematic videos which are designed to be engaging and informative, and also providing a visual and accessible way to understand the benefits of TAPPI. And you'll also find the wonderful animations that we showed you one of these animations earlier on, these great animations that were co-produced by the TAPPI Champions group and the co-production partner, Co-Production Works. So if I just show you briefly through how TAPPI changed us. So here you've got a video of the different voices from TAPPI. We don't have time to play these videos now, but I encourage you to visit the website and go look at these videos. And here you've got links to different blogs from the co-production groups, also the personal stories which Sally shared in the chat box earlier on. Various stories, a great poem by one of our champion, Alice, one of our builds champion. Then the different some blogs from the test beds, how TAPPI changed what they do, and those videos those animations we keep talking about, which I really encourage you to watch. They're absolutely fantastic. Right, now I'm going to go to the principles. So here it's divided in on these pages. So here we explain how and why we decided to revise the original 10 TAPPI principles that were tested during the second phase of the TAPPI program. And so you can go here to explain how we got there. And here, if you go to the revised principle, you have a list of these new revised principle and definitions for each one of them. And here at the bottom, you've got a PDF which you can download to share further. Okay, now the next section is the how you can do it. So this is really giving you the tools and resources that were produced by the TAPPI partners to help you adopt the TAPPI principles. So I encourage you, we don't have time to go through everything today, obviously, but I encourage you to explore these tools and see how you can integrate the TAPPI principles and technologies into your own practices. So this section is divided in 3 sections, which is the co-production sections, where you can learn how to involve your users in the design and implementation of technology solutions. You've got the supporting change section, which are tools and checklists developed by TSA to develop your strategies and ensure successful adoption. and the evaluation, which is where you can find the evaluation toolkit developed by Cambridge Centre. Okay. Then we've got the what we learned section. So these pages they contain the learning from the TAPPI program, and it's divided in two main sections: the what we did section, which is a summary of which includes a summary of the technologies trialed across the 6 test beds, and a detailed summary of the co-production aspects of the second phase of TAPPI. So it goes into quite a lot of detail, and I really would encourage anybody interested to go look at these sections. And what we found, so this part is based on the evaluation report from Cambridge, which it's a summary of the report, which you can find on the website as well. But if you want to have a quick summary of the technologies that were used, the outcomes for individuals and families, with some of the pictures that Rowan was referring to, and some great quotes from residents and staff, this is where you will find everything. Okay. And then here we've got another section, which is the other resources of interest, which we will keep adding to as time goes by. So this is not the end of TAPPI. We'll keep adding things to this website. Great. So that's pretty much it from me. So I think we just have we've got some time left for the Q&A. But I hope really you go and explore these pages and resources and see how you can incorporate technology thoughtfully and inclusively, so that we can all create environments where our aging population thrives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jerome. That's absolutely fantastic. And I echo that. I do encourage people to go and have a look at the resources. Nathan, if you're there, one of the questions is about A2D, if you'd like to pick up on that and say something.
Yeah, very briefly. So this relates to the analog to digital transition in the UK, and the announcement made, I guess, last week by Openreach to delay or that rollout from end of December 25 to end of January 27. I did respond to the question. I don't know if everyone can see that answer, but if they can't, I'll write it again. So there was plenty of advice and guidance on the TSA website about what that really means. Ultimately, the aim should be for any organisation to continue with your planning, to understand risk in terms of how you're supporting people, to look at the technology and the assets that you have, continue with your plans, and continue it to take that forward in a safe manner. The date may have changed, but the infrastructure network is changing all the time. I know I can see Gary nodding quite a lot, and he's obviously going through this in a practical sense. So stick with what you were doing, but always come back to us from a TSA perspective. Either email me, or I'll give you another email address. Our job is to provide you with that advice and guidance to help you in an independent manner get through this process, and frankly, to deliver better services through digital. It's not just about switching analog devices for digital devices.
Thank you, Nathan. That's great. Hannah, if you're there, there's a question about what do you mean by suitable building design, if you could pick that up.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I just mean really design that meets people's needs. So that might be things like, is the door too heavy for people to open without assistance? Are the door frames wide enough? Are the countertops at an appropriate height to be adapted to people's needs and to meet various different needs? And I'd point towards the HAPPI report as well, which was one of the precursors to TAPPI. That's got some principles of design for housing an aging population, and it's really just about making sure that our buildings and the way that we design them is appropriate for people's various diverse needs and can be adapted going forward as well.
That's great, thank you. And I've just spotted in the chat that Nathan's put some email addresses for anyone who's got questions about the analog to digital switch over. So thanks, Nathan, for that. Has anybody else on the panel picked up any questions I might have missed? Jeremy?
Oh yeah, Sarah, if I could just quickly come in. I mean, Hannah raises a really important point about HAPPI, the Housing Our Aging Population Panel for Innovation. It had a sister set of principles, of which one of those is about how we enable all our accommodation to become care ready and the application of technology within that. And that is something that is still an ambition and includes a number of programs to inform and influence building regulations and design criteria, both in the social housing sector and in the private sector for ordinary house building as well. So a really excellent point. And what I'm struck by this session in particular is while the focus has been on, I think Roy mentioned care tech, issues around prop tech, equipment, and the broader issue around technology enablement across all our aspects. It's something that TAPPI touches on right throughout. So I don't know, Roy, if you've got any further thoughts around how care tech become prop tech and beyond. And I think that, and green tech as well, as we move forward even further. So any thoughts? I'd be really interested from you in the panel.
Yeah. Yes, can you hear me? I hope so. You know, we put these labels on things. There's a significant overlap here in all sorts of senses. If just to give you an example, I mean, we have in many homes now Alexa, and I'm not sure. In fact, I know that we are not utilizing Alexa as much as we might in many ways to make lives better for older people and indeed the vulnerable people generally. So there's a lot to do. Is that prop tech? Is that care tech? What is it? It's just, frankly, people tech. Now, my belief is things will just continue to develop in really quick ways which we fail, the pace at which things change, we often fail to estimate well. And in this context, I suspect in 5 years' time, things will be very different for all of us in terms of monitoring, in terms of the tech that supports the property, particularly things like mildew and mold recognition and management, because that has huge effect on respiratory problems that cause falls, and falls cause hospital attendance, which cause all of those issues associated with non-independent living. So it's going to be very much broader. It's going to be very quick, and it's everything. Thanks, Jeremy.
Well, thank you, Roy. And can I also just thank everybody for their excellent questions. Those that have been answered, we'll also address any that come in subsequently. Sarah, can I thank you for chairing this afternoon's session and for Dunhill's support for making this programme possible, both to date, but also, as you've heard right throughout, how we sustain and maintain this so that we can, what I call the 5 I's, to continue to involve people, continue to provide that information, enable people to make a positive impact and influence their local communities, and above all, be inspired by TAPPI. On behalf of the HousingLIN, TSA and all the partners, the team behind the scenes for putting on this HAPPI TAPPI Hour, thank you very much. And we look forward to continue this journey with you. And as Sally mentioned at the outset, the recording and the slides and the chat will be available shortly. But as we leave this afternoon, you will be asked to complete a feedback form. Do so, because we'd love to continue this journey. And as Rowan and Jerome have pointed out, we have a permanent record, but also the narration continues, involving and led by the residents and citizens to enable that message to get across. So a warm thanks again to all of you for a brilliant session. Thank you.